Picture this. I'm standing at the edge of my kitchen, the morning light spilling over the counter, casting long shadows across a half-finished sketch I've been tinkering with for days. My name's Julia, I'm 32, and this is my world. Quiet, predictable, a little messy around the edges. I've got a husband, Adam, who's 35, and the kind of person who can't sit still for more than a heartbeat. He's always chasing the next big thing, the next unforgettable moment, with a lean frame that seems wired for motion, warm brown eyes that pull you in, and a boyish grin that masks something deeper, something restless I can't always pin down. We've built a life together that feels comfortable, I guess. Safe. But there's a routine to it, a rhythm that sometimes lulls me into forgetting what excitement even feels like. Adam, though, he's the one who shakes things up, always plotting spontaneous getaways to jolt us out of the everyday grind. I'm a freelance graphic designer, which sounds more glamorous than it is. Most days, I'm hunched over my laptop, racing against deadlines, trying to bring someone else's vision to life while mine gathers dust in the corner. Adam's energy overshadows me sometimes, not in a bad way, just in a way that makes me feel like I'm always playing catch-up. He's the wind, and I'm the kite, tethered but not always sure where I'm being pulled. Still, I love him for it. His passion, his need to explore. It's what keeps us tethered, even when I'm buried in work and he's pacing the house like a caged animal. It was one of those late summer weekends, the kind where the sun feels like it's holding on just a little longer before autumn creeps in. I was planning to spend the day tackling a backlog of projects, coffee in hand, headphones on, the world shut out. But Adam had other ideas. I heard him before I saw him. His footsteps quick on the hardwood, that grin already in his voice as Jinji, assistant, as he burst into the kitchen holding his phone like it was a treasure map. Julia, pack a bag. We're going on a day trip. I found this vineyard a few hours away, up in the rolling mountains. It's supposed to be incredible. The owner does personal tours. People can't stop raving about him online. I couldn't help but smile at his enthusiasm, even as a tiny part of me groaned. Work was calling, but so was Adam, and I knew which one I'd choose. I always did, for his sake. There's something about making him happy that still gets me, even after all these years. So I threw a light jacket and some sunscreen into a tote, and soon we were in the car, windows cracked open, the faint hum of old jazz tunes drifting from the radio. The drive was beautiful, I'll give him that. The mountain roads twisted and turned, each bend revealing a new slice of the world, golden fields giving way to dense pine forests, then opening up to wide valleys where the distant peaks seemed to touch the sky. I felt myself unwinding, the stress of deadlines melting away with every mile. Adam was in his element, pointing out little details, a hawk circling overhead, a crumbling stone wall that must have been there for centuries. His excitement was contagious, and by the time we pulled into the gravel lot of the vineyard, I was ready for whatever this day had in store. Stepping out of the car, the first thing that hit me was the smell, warm, earthy, like sun-baked soil mixed with the sweet green scent of grape leaves. It wrapped around me like a memory I didn't know I had. Adam grabbed my hand, his grip firm and eager, and we started down one of the narrow dirt paths that wound between towering rows of vines. The leaves rustled softly in the gentle breeze, whispering secrets I couldn't quite catch. Above us, the sky was a perfect, cloudless blue, so vivid it almost hurt to look at. The emerald green of the vines stretched out endlessly in every direction, a living carpet that rolled over the hills until it met the jagged outline of the mountains in the distance. It was like stepping into a painting. Every detail too perfect to be real. Adam was buzzing beside me, his camera slung around his neck, snapping photos of everything, the way the sunlight filtered through the leaves, the gnarled trunks of the oldest vines, even the tiny pebbles underfoot. His laughter rang out, bright and easy, as he turned to me with that boyish grin. "Can you believe this place, Jules? It's like we've stumbled into another world." I nodded, squeezing his hand, feeling the warmth of the day settle into my bones. There was something magical about it, something that made the rest of life feel far away. We hadn't walked far when a figure appeared ahead, striding toward us with the confidence of someone who knew every inch of this land. "Welcome, friends," he called out, his voice deep and rich, carrying just a hint of an accent I couldn't place. As he got closer, I took him in, tall and rugged, probably in his early 40s, with weathered hands that spoke of years spent working the earth. His dark hair was streaked with gray at the temples, and his piercing green eyes seemed to hold a story in every glance. He extended a hand, his grip firm as he introduced himself. "I'm Marco, owner of this little slice of heaven. I'm glad you could join me today." His smile was wide, charismatic, lighting up his face in a way that made you want to listen to whatever he had to say. But when his gaze met mine, it lingered just a moment too long, and I felt a strange flutter in my chest, something I couldn't name. Marco wasted no time launching into the tour, guiding us through the rows of vines as he shared the history of the vineyard with a passion that was almost tangible. His stories wove through generations of his family, each tale rooted in the soil we walked on, and I found myself hanging on his every word. Adam was just as captivated, asking questions, snapping more photos, completely in his element. But as the tour went on, I couldn't shake the feeling of Marco's eyes on me, catching mine in fleeting moments when Adam wasn't looking. It was subtle, barely noticeable, but it stirred something inside me. A curiosity, maybe, or something I didn't want to name. After a while, Adam's phone buzzed with a work call he couldn't ignore. He apologized, stepping away to take it, promising he'd catch up with us in a few minutes. I watched him walk off, his figure growing smaller down the path, and suddenly it was just Marco and me, standing among the vines. The air felt different without Adam there, heavier somehow, charged with something unspoken. Marco's demeanor shifted almost instantly. His voice softened, losing the booming tone of the tour guide, becoming more personal, almost intimate. "You know, Julia," he said, my name rolling off his tongue like he'd said it 1,000 times. "There's a spot deeper in the vineyard that I don't show just anyone. It's got the best view in the whole place. I'd like to take you there if you're up for it." I hesitated, my mind racing. There was something in the way he looked at me, a quiet intensity that made my pulse quicken. I should have said no, waited for Adam to come back, but there was a pull in Marco's confidence, a promise of something extraordinary that I couldn't resist. "Sure," I said finally, my voice quieter than I meant it to be. "Let's go." We started walking, veering off the main path onto a narrower trail that wound deeper into the vineyard. The rows of vines grew denser here, their leaves forming a thick canopy overhead that blocked out most of the sun. Dappled shadows danced on the ground beneath our feet, and the world seemed to close in around us, intimate and secretive. The only sounds were the crunch of gravel under our shoes and the faint chirp of birds somewhere in the distance, their calls swallowed by the stillness. It felt like we were the only two people in the world, tucked away in this hidden corner of the earth. And I couldn't tell if that thrilled me or scared me. Marco walked just a step ahead, his broad shoulders cutting a path through the overgrown vines, and I couldn't help but notice the ease of his movements, the way he belonged here in a way I never could. After a few minutes, we reached a small clearing, a natural balcony of sorts, where the vines parted just enough to reveal a breathtaking vista of the mountains. Their peaks were sharp against the sky, dusted with the first hints of autumn gold, and the valley below stretched out like a dream. I caught my breath, stunned by the beauty of it, but before I could say anything, Marco's hand brushed my shoulder as he pointed to the view. "There it is," he murmured, his voice low, almost a whisper. "The best spot in the vineyard." His touch lingered, warm through the thin fabric of my shirt, and I froze, my heart pounding in my chest. He stepped closer, his breath warm against my ear as he spoke again, his words sending a shiver down my spine. "Your husband trusts me to show you the best spot." The implication hung heavy in the air, and I felt a rush of adrenaline, my mind spinning with the weight of it. I knew what he meant, knew I should pull away, laugh it off, wait for Adam. But there was another part of me, a reckless, hungry part I barely recognized, that didn't want to stop. Loyalty to Adam clawed at me, a sharp pang of guilt twisting in my gut, but it warred with this sudden, inexplicable desire, a pull I couldn't explain, didn't want to explain. And then, before I could think better of it, I gave in. I turned to Marco, my eyes meeting his, and in that moment, everything else fell away. The world narrowed to just the two of us, the vineyard's beauty fading into a blur as my breath caught in my throat. My heart was a drum in my chest, loud and erratic, and for a fleeting second, I let myself lean into the moment, into the forbidden thrill of it. Marco's gaze held mine, intense and unyielding, and I felt the heat of his presence like a physical force. But just as quickly as it had ignited, reality crashed back in. The weight of what I was doing, what I was about to do, hit me like a tidal wave. Guilt surged through me, bitter and sharp, and I stepped back, my hands trembling as I muttered something incoherent about needing to find Adam. That's when I saw him, a figure in the distance, standing motionless near a row of vines, a glass of wine in his hand, his face unreadable from afar. My stomach dropped, a sickening lurch that made my knees weak. It was Adam. He must have finished his call sooner than I expected. He must have seen everything, the way I'd stood too close to Marco, the way I'd hesitated, the way I'd almost crossed a line I could never uncross. My mind spun into a frenzy, every thought a jagged edge of panic. How long had he been standing there? What had he seen in my face, in my body language? What had he interpreted from that charged, damning moment? Marco noticed him too, his expression shifting to one of quiet concern, as if he understood the gravity of what had just unfolded. He took a step back, his voice low and measured as he murmured, "I should check on another group. I'll leave you to it." There was no trace of the earlier intensity in his tone, just a polite distance, and before I could respond, he turned and slipped away down the path, disappearing between the vines as if he'd never been there at all. I was left alone, the weight of the situation pressing down on me like a physical force, my breath shallow and uneven. I forced myself to move, to walk toward Adam, each step heavier than the last, as if the earth itself was trying to hold me back. My mind raced, scrambling for excuses, apologies, anything to undo what had just happened, or at least to soften the blow. I rehearsed words in my head, explanations that sounded hollow even to me. It wasn't what it looked like. I got caught up in the moment. I didn't mean anything by it. But every phrase felt like a lie, a flimsy shield against the truth I couldn't face. My throat was tight, my palms sweaty, and the vineyard around me, once so breathtaking, now felt like a cage, its beauty tainted by the shame burning in my chest. As I got closer, I could finally see Adam's face, and it stopped me cold. It was calm, unnervingly so, but there was a hardness to it, a coldness I'd never seen before. His brown eyes, usually so warm and inviting, were devoid of any softness, like shutters had been pulled down over his soul. His jaw was tight, a muscle twitching faintly, as if he was holding back a storm of words, or emotions, he wasn't ready to unleash. I opened my mouth to speak, my voice shaky and small, stammering over half-formed apologies. "Adam, I didn't mean, it was a mistake, I swear." But before I could finish, he cut me off with a single look, sharp and piercing, that sliced through my words like a blade. Without a word, he turned away, his back to me as he started walking toward the car, his strides deliberate and unyielding. I followed, my legs feeling like lead, the silence between us suffocating. It wasn't just quiet. It was a living thing, heavy and oppressive, wrapping around us like a fog I couldn't escape. The vineyard, with its endless rows of vines and golden sunlight, no longer held any magic. Every rustle of leaves, every distant bird call, seemed to mock me, amplifying the void where words should have been. I noticed the small, painful details as we walked. How Adam's shoulders were rigid, squared against me like a wall. How his hands were shoved deep into his pockets, fingers probably clenched into fists. I wanted to reach out, to touch his arm, to break through the barrier that had sprung up between us in an instant, but my own guilt held me back. It was as if my betrayal had built an invisible cage around me, one I couldn't escape no matter how much I wanted to. So I just trailed behind, my sneakers scuffing against the gravel, each step a reminder of the mess I'd made. When we reached the car, Adam didn't even glance at me as he slid into the driver's seat. I hesitated for a split second before opening the passenger door, the creak of the hinge sounding louder than it should have in the stillness. I settled into my seat, the familiar smell of the leather interior doing nothing to comfort me. The jazz that had played on the way up the mountain was gone, the radio switched off, leaving only the low hum of the engine as Adam started the car. The sound of tires crunching over gravel filled the space between us as we began the descent down the winding mountain road, each turn feeling like it was taking us further from the life we'd known just hours ago. I stared out the window, unable to look at him, my hands fidgeting restlessly in my lap. My fingers twisted together, picking at a loose thread on my jeans, anything to keep from facing the reality of his presence beside me. The silence was thicker than ever, a physical weight pressing down on my chest, making it hard to breathe. It wasn't just the absence of words, it was the absence of us, of the connection we'd always had, even in our quiet moments. Outside, the scenery blurred past, the vibrant greens and golds of the mountains fading into muted shades as the sun began to dip lower in the sky. But I barely noticed. All I could see was the reflection of my own face in the glass, pale and drawn, haunted by the memory of what I'd done. My mind kept circling back to that moment in the vineyard, replaying it over and over like a broken record. The way Marco's voice had softened, the heat of his breath against my ear, the way I'd let myself get pulled into something I knew was wrong. I hated myself for it, for the weakness that had taken over, for the way I'd betrayed Adam's trust in a split second of stupidity. I wanted to scream, to cry, to do something to release the guilt gnawing at my insides, but I couldn't. I was trapped in this car, trapped in this silence, trapped in the consequences of my own choices. Every crunch of the tires felt like a judgment, every hum of the engine a reminder that I might have broken something that couldn't be fixed. After what felt like an eternity, Adam finally spoke. His voice was low, steady, but each word cut through me like a knife, sharp and cold. "This is the last time I'm taking you anywhere." I turned to him, shock rippling through me, my breath catching in my throat. I searched his face for any sign of softness, any hint of forgiveness, anything that might tell me he didn't mean it. But there was nothing. Only a hollow resignation, his eyes fixed on the road ahead, his profile carved from stone. The warmth I'd always found in him was gone, replaced by a distance so vast I didn't know how to cross it. I opened my mouth to respond, to beg for a chance to explain, to pour out all the apologies I'd been rehearsing in my head. But my throat tightened, a lump forming that I couldn't swallow past, and no words came. All I could do was sit there, stunned, as the weight of his statement settled over me like a shroud. The rest of the drive was a blur, the mountains fading into the background as the reality of what he'd said sank deeper into my bones. This wasn't just about the trip, about a day gone wrong. It was about us, about our marriage, about everything we'd built together over the years. I thought about the mornings we'd spent laughing over coffee, the late-night talks where we'd shared our dreams. The days that followed the vineyard trip felt like a slow, painful unraveling of everything I'd ever known. Back home, the house that once felt like a sanctuary became a hollow shell, echoing with the silence of what used to be. Adam barely spoke to me, his presence lingering like a ghost in the spaces we once shared. He started sleeping in the guest room, the door closed tight, a barrier I didn't dare cross. I'd pass by in the hallway, catching glimpses of him through the crack when he didn't notice. His shoulders slumped over his laptop, his face a mask of quiet resolve. He wouldn't look at me, not really. His warm brown eyes, the ones that used to pull me in with a single glance, now slid past me as if I were invisible, a stranger in my own home. The boyish grin I loved so much was gone, replaced by a tight line that spoke of hurt too deep to voice. I tried to reach out, desperate to bridge the chasm between us. I'd leave little notes on the kitchen counter, scribbled apologies or simple pleas like, "Can we talk?" folded neatly by his coffee mug. They'd sit there untouched, the ink staring back at me like a reprimand until I'd crumple them up in shame. I cooked his favorite meals, the scent of garlic and rosemary filling the house as I stirred pots of creamy risotto or roasted chicken just the way he liked it. I'd set the table for two, hoping he'd join me, but he'd grab a plate and eat in the other room, the clink of his fork against porcelain, the only sound breaking the stillness. I'd try to start conversations, my voice small and tentative, asking about his day or mentioning something trivial, just to hear him respond. But he'd answer in monosyllables, if at all, his tone flat, his gaze fixed on anything but me. Each attempt felt like reaching into a void, my hands grasping at air, and every rejection carved a deeper wound into my already aching heart. Nights were the worst. I'd lie awake in our bed, the empty space beside me a cold reminder of what I'd lost. The sheets still held the faint scent of him, a cruel ghost of better times, and I'd clutch his pillow, burying my face in it, as if I could pull him back through sheer will. My mind refused to rest, replaying every detail of that day in the vineyard with torturous clarity. I could still feel the warmth of Marco's touch on my shoulder, the way his breath had brushed my ear, the magnetic pull of his gaze that I'd been too weak to resist. Then came Adam's cold stare, the moment I saw him standing there among the vines, the unspoken accusation in his silence. The weight of my betrayal pressed down on me like a stone, heavy and unyielding, until I thought I might suffocate under it. I'd stare at the ceiling, tears slipping silently down my cheeks, wondering how a single moment of weakness could shatter everything I held dear. A week after the trip, the inevitable came. It was a gray morning, the kind where the sky seems to press down on the world, heavy with unspoken things. I was in the kitchen, nursing a cup of coffee that had gone cold, the bitter taste mirroring the dread in my chest. Adam walked in, his steps measured, a stack of papers tucked under his arm. He didn't say good morning, didn't offer a glance of warmth. He just pulled out a chair at the kitchen table, the scrape of wood against tile sounding louder than it should have in the quiet. I watched him sit, my heart thudding painfully as he set the papers down with deliberate care. The morning light streamed through the window, pale and unforgiving, casting harsh lines across his face. It highlighted the shadows under his eyes, the weariness etched into every feature, and I realized he'd been carrying this pain just as heavily as I had. The air smelled of burnt coffee, a lingering mistake from earlier when I'd forgotten to turn off the machine, and it mingled with the tension, making every breath feel acrid. He looked at me then, really looked at me, for the first time in days. But there was no recognition in his eyes, only a distant sadness that mirrored the emptiness between us. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment if you enjoyed this story. This will help us create more engaging stories for you.